Hi, Internet. This is Bob Bravo, Superintendent, Campbell Union High School District, and welcome to our second edition of Teacher Feature, in which I have a chance to talk with some of our teachers about all the innovative things that they are doing to grapple with distance learning. And last week, hopefully you got to see the video that I did with Janae Fawson. And in that video, I think she mentioned two teachers at Del Mar, Tiffany Cheng and Durant, and what she's learned from them. So that's who we're going to talk to next. We're going to talking today with Tiffany Cheng and Durant, both teachers at Del Mar High School. Tiffany teaches chemistry, science, and Kyra is a social science teacher. And together, they created something called the DONgles Guide for Distance Learning, which is a resource that their fellow teachers can use to help them navigate these waters. And so I'm just going to start by asking, what led you to make it?
Kyra, go ahead and take over for that one.
Okay, so we started the DONgles Guide to Distance Learning because I think that one of the things that Tiffany and I have been working together all year as part-time TOSAs at Del Mar, and when all of this happened and there were so many things that were unknown, and I think we were both feeling really anxious, and like all of our lives had just been sort of turned upside down. And so I think both of us, one thing that we share in common is that one way that we deal with that unknown and those feelings of anxiety is to just do something. And so we kind of sat down and we're like, what can we actually do right now, like to make us feel like we're being proactive? And we both had a lot of ideas. And so we just started some slides. And Tiffany was saying earlier, we started with one slide and then we just kind of kept going from there, and then adding ideas as we came up with more and more, and it kind of morphed into something that I don't think either of us really expected it to become.
So is it fair to say that it started out as a way really to organize your own thoughts?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It was definitely just a brainstorm or a melding of the minds.
Do one of you want to share screen and show people what the DONgles Guide looks like a little bit?
Sure.
So at what point when you were making it did you all think like, hey, maybe we should share this?
What when it started to look really pretty.
I think after the first, we started with a grid, one slide that was a grid, and then as soon as it morphed into like 2 or 3 slides, and then both of us just get carried away with the aesthetic of everything. And we started bucketing things, and we're like, okay, actually, yeah, this has to go out to all staff. And I think we made this right after the first 2 weeks after our supplemental learning opportunities. We were all about to go into our remote 1-hour lessons, and we just figured out what that schedule was looking like. And yeah, it just morphed, and we're like, yeah, this needs to go out. We can do. We actually created a website as well, and this was after the distance learning guide.
The link to our website we have a short link. It's bit.ly/ all capital DMHS DDLS, which stands for DONgles Digital Learning Series. DMHS DDLS, all capital letters.
Very cool.
We can share that out too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So the guide, from just the little bit you scrolled us through, is advice about how to design a lesson in the digital world, but additionally then it has resources, because you had like I saw the logos for things like TED and other things. Yeah.
Kind of going back to why we started it, I think it was one, to be proactive, and I think why it started right here, actually, I'm remembering now that we had gotten a question about like, how do we design a 1-hour lesson virtually, like something that none of our teachers had ever done before, including us. We didn't know either, so we're like, let's try and figure this out during this was again during those first few weeks when it was supplemental learning. And so that was where we dove in with like, okay, if we're doing this 1-hour lesson, and we kind of started coming up with this idea of like chunking it, then, starting with the importance of just like building some kind of community in this place can be extra hard to do that. And so once we had started with these buckets, that's where we kind of built out from there. So you can see here, we started with the sort of chunks in a 1 hour lesson. And then we started adding things over here at the bottom. So really thinking about like, as we were doing our research to come up with a lot of this stuff, we started discovering all these other resources. I think also one of the reasons why it was not shared broadly from the beginning was there was a sense from us that like there was just a million things like this out there already. I mean, we were really just sort of curating content at this point of going through all the things that we were receiving and trying to pick out the things that we thought would work best at Del Mar with our kids and our educators. And so it was like, I think when we realized that people actually wanted it, we were a little bit surprised because we were like, we didn't really, I think we just didn't think we had made anything that.
Well,
Yeah.
a curator is not a curator, is not a curator. All curators are not equal, right? And plus the aesthetic, come on. Yeah, of course people are going to want this.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, or let's talk more about the first box on that how to plan the 1 hour lesson, and that is build community. And one of the things that I have heard from some of our colleagues is that it feels very hard to be online, and it feels hard to get students motivated. And I've heard students say they find it hard to be motivated in the remote setting. That they have told me, however, that they do feel more motivated when that there are things that teachers can do that do make them feel more motivated. And so I think that's probably connected somewhat to building community. So how do you as teachers try and get kids motivated so they're just not doing something different during the lesson? Like, yeah, they have the lesson on, but they're texting or drawing, whatever.
Yeah. Right.
I think
do you want to go ahead?
I think the examples that we have on here with playing a game or making the slides collaborative or just trying to build in some kind of accountability and also some fun is definitely on the forefront of every one of our teachers' minds. I think we had a really big brainstorm in one of our webinars, or maybe it was even before that. We all got together and we're like, well, how is this going to look? What are we going to do? And especially because, as teachers, all we do is react to students. It's that tactile, like I can see you, even if like I can feel the space you're in. I can feel when you're not looking at me, or I can feel when you're not paying attention. And so in this digital realm where their screens or their cameras are off and their mics are muted, trying to get them to engage by doing silly things like playing a game. I think one of our colleagues was really great. He had students fill out a Google form and tell 2 truths and a lie about them. And so for his warm up, everyone was guessing in the class their 2 truths and a lie about their classmates. Another colleague shares their playlist to his students so that his students still get to learn about him and go into the kookiness of what is, I think it was Mr. Braithwaite, right? What is Mr. Braithwaite doing? And then, just collaborative slides. And I think Mr. Doe also made like a comic slide where he was like, okay, here's a shape of a triangle, draw a picture for me. And just to have students engage in that very simple way makes the whole difference. Like they feel like, yeah, my teacher really is there, and they're still the crazy fun person we know them to be.
Well, what's
Yeah.
interesting to me is that I have, not a lot, but I've had a few students tell me, I actually feel like I'm connected more to my teacher now than I was before. And I think maybe those are perhaps maybe some of the more introverted kids maybe in the class. I don't know.
I think kind of fundamental to that like kind of chokes me up a little bit. I think fundamental to a lot of the things that Tiffany was talking about is like, I think where we really wanted to start, and this is like, I think from some of the culture at Del Mar and just the teachers that we work with or that we were inspired by, was like making connections and trying to find some fun or positivity in something that is just sort of inherently not fun at all, and can feel just so heavy on all of us. And so I think that when we were trying to design this part of it, that was the kind of core foundation of the ideas that we were trying to come up with for community. It was like, how do we try to build some positivity, and how do we make sure that there's built-in moments of connection between teachers and students and between students? So like, I think the tools that you see here are their means to do that, but underneath a lot of this is like the purpose of the Padlet, for example, is a place where kids can share things with each other or pictures. You know, the purpose of using the video conference chat is being able to see each other, communicate with each other, and trying to find some creative ways to do that. Same with all the games and the slides. It was really what teachers ended up doing with them to create some fun and to create some moments of like real connection, I think was the foundation of what we were trying to build.
Very cool. I want to transition now because in her last answer, Tiffany said in our webinar. So after you guys did the DONgles Guide to Distance Learning, y'all decided to start a series of webinars.
We did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
tell
we did.
Internet about that. Internet is listening. Tell Internet about that.
This kind of started from, we were trying to find ways to bring people together in a meaningful way, and we were like, we have all these things in this guide, but when are people really going to have a chance to read it and look at it? And there was like so many great ideas coming from teachers. And I think one of the things that we found in some of our most successful webinars have been panels. So we did a student panel. We've done a couple of teacher panels. So there's some webinars where it's, you know, one of us delivering a little like tips or tricks. That's kind of where it started, was like, let's just provide some ideas and see what happens. And then we started getting into what I think was really powerful, which was the panels that we did. And one of the funny things that we found right away was, so the purpose of all of this is sharing with each other, building community and sharing between our educators, because we knew that there was really cool things happening in classrooms. And so we sent out this first round of emails sort of inviting teachers to join this panel. Tiffany, you were the one who sent that out.
Oh yes, it was, we see and we hear from our colleagues all the time, and we think that the things that they're doing in their classrooms during this distance learning is extraordinary. So we decided to put on a teacher panel. And when I first emailed, I think it was the 6 teachers, you know, we're like, hey, would you be on this webinar? All you have to do is answer 3 questions. You know, what's working for you? What's been challenging? What could you do next? What are your moments of success in distance learning? And all 6 of them replied, are you sure you're talking about me? They all replied like, thanks, but I think I had like a moment, like a 5-second clip that maybe was successful, and they were all hesitant. They were all like, I don't think I could share anything. I don't know that I would add anything. And what we found was, after about a couple emails going back and forth all week, we finally got these 6 amazing teachers to open up. We got Mr. Braithwaite, Angela Silver, Doug Dickens, Jeff Dong, Jonathan Bauer, and Stacey Ross. We got them to open up and share with us their moments of success. And we found that it was the simplest things, and everyone was agreeing. They're like, oh yeah, direction slides, we should definitely have that. Oh yeah, giving them, you know, a platform to do something silly. Everything was just a lot of fun. And then that was actually one of our most successful webinars, was the teacher panel. I think it was second to the student panel. But we had like the most attendance there, and it's been so fun just to share out and build this community.
So
I think
how
what
many
it also
do you have?
highlighted, oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say what I think it also highlighted that I think that educators, we do things that we don't think about and that they make a really big difference, but we aren't really even aware we're doing it. And with this teacher panel, for example, somebody, I think it was one of our APs, Lindsay Schubert, had shouted out like she had been visiting a class and she had saw a teacher just saying hi to each student by name. And it was something that I don't think a teacher would ever really be aware of that they were doing to build connections, but to call it out and recognize like how powerful it is just to be saying students' names and acknowledging them individually, I think really highlighted the bigger thing, which was that like we really are doing some really incredible things in this challenging, super challenging environment. And I think a lot of them we're just not aware of and would never even consider wins, but they really are wins. They really are some small successes. And it was fun to be able to highlight some of those really positive things.
So let's talk about some small successes in a second. But before we do, how many of these webinars now have you done in your series?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
wow.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay.
15 so far.
So that's just 15 since March. You started in March?
Or since
no,
April.
Since April.
Started in April.
We do 3 a week. Yeah.
Wow, cool. So, and this is at the same website that you mentioned before? That people could go and watch these if they want. Yeah. So, little wins. Let's leave our internet watchers, viewers with just a couple of examples, from each of you, a little win that you had during this time. So the two of you both knew a lot going in. You already knew a lot about educational technology, but that doesn't mean you've done distance learning per se. So you probably had your own challenges along the way. So a little win that each of you experienced.
Oh gosh, I have to think about that. I'm one of our teachers now. Like, wait, hold on.
Yeah. I could go. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead and go first.
I think what I think is one of the biggest wins for me is I think from these webinar series, from getting to like hear teachers talk to each other and share with each other. And I feel like in this distance environment, I've seen a level of collaboration and sharing between teachers that I had never really even seen before. And to me, that has just felt like a huge win. I've talked to more teachers in the last 2 months than I think I had in the 2 months prior, just because of the way that we're kind of siloed in our classrooms. And I think, going back to last August, talking about Moana and being Voyagers and kind of going outside our classroom, that's a lot easier said than done. It's a lot easier saying than done as well. And I feel like, as counterintuitive as it seems, somehow in these last 2 months, a lot of us have really just been able to actually become Voyagers, because we're able to use this internet platform and Google Meets and Zoom and Hangouts and have flexibility in our schedules. And while certainly the circumstances are not ideal, I feel like educators in general have stepped up to really to do that, to voyage out, to share when they're uncomfortable, when they think nothing that they've done has been successful, and then to be recognized for those things. And that to me is just been really incredible to see.
Okay, now internet, Kyra just dropped a reference to her Teacher of the Year address, in which she referenced the Moana film. And did someone record your Teacher of the Year address?
There has
to be. It is recorded.
There has to be a recording.
There is a recording? Well, because now you're going to have to post it, because now you just made a reference to it, and you're going to have to post it. Tiffany, how about you? What's a win that you would claim?
I think, well, my brain went 2 ways. I was like, a win in my classroom, or just a win digitally with our staff. And I think, to echo Kyra's point of collaboration, I think the biggest win I would say that we've had she and I, is that first week where we weren't even doing supplemental learning. We were just kind of figuring out what was happening with being remote. We were all just kind of figuring out what does this look, and the big win was our professional development training that we put on. We did a supplemental learning professional development thing with our entire staff, and the biggest win was that our staff, we put out a segment of Google Classroom lessons or assignments, and we got I think it was literally 100% of our staff completed that training. And they all received the little badges, kind of like what Janae had broadcasted last week. They all got Remind badges. They got Google Classroom badges. They got Zoom badges. They got all of those things, but 100% of them did this work in a time that was so unknown, where there were so many crazy things going on. They found a way to get on Google Classroom. They found a way to learn how to use Google Classroom Meets and use Remind and contact all of our students. I think after the first 2 weeks, the win for tracking our students and making sure that we said hi to them, we contacted about 80% of them, which is unheard of. And I'm just so proud of our staff. I don't think that's my win. I think that's our school's win.
Yeah, that is. And for those that wouldn't know, when school first went remote, there were a lot of students who we didn't hear from or we couldn't contact. And Del Mar got to the we've contacted everybody, just so much faster than the other site. So that way to go, guys. So here's an absolute last question, I promise. What is your advice for the teacher who says, I want to take things to the next level, but I'm not sure what to do? What would you tell them?
Whatever they're doing right now is already great, is already next level. I feel like them just putting themselves out there online and being available is already next level. But if they want to go crazy, we definitely have lots of ideas. Yeah, they don't have to overcomplicate it at all.
Yeah, I think that is a big one. I think that keeping it simple, regardless of all the things that we have out there. My other piece of advice would just be to share your experiences with other educators at your school. Find ways to talk to each other about what you're doing in each other's classrooms. I think that's, to me, is where we have been most successful, is just trying to pull out all of these small wins and successes, and share them between our staff and have conversations, big or small, about what we're doing. And I think that has been, I think that's where the learning happens, and that's where the growing happens. And that's the only way that we come out of this, with some positive changes, I think.
Well, thank you for having a conversation with me and our friends, the internet. And internet, I've been talking with Tiffany Cheng, science teacher, Del Mar High School, and Kyra Durant, social science teacher at Del Mar High School. Two people that are worthy of the name tech gurus, for sure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Really fun. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, internet.